Yeah, good morning, and hey now, PSW staff, clients, friends joining us for a Thursday class. Thank you for dropping by, tuning in. We looked at Bach yesterday, the great German composer, and we looked at counterpoint, two or more independent lines going at the same time. We got through that. That was a little tough, but we're making good progress, good leeway. And then tomorrow we're going to see your film scoring results for the mission, which I can't wait to show you. Today, we're going to talk about a dancer, not a musician, but somebody that knows obviously music and dance very well. I did a Zoom class for you a week ago or so on this gentleman, but I thought I'd do a class, an official class, just because there's so many things that I wanted to talk about and comment on, and we're going to be looking at a lot of stuff. Not because I'm phoning it in, but because some of the things that he's talking about are very important, and also visually, we have to see what he's talking about. So we're going to just take it really easy and nice today, and really enjoy some beautiful dancing. And I'm sure Lindsay knows way more about this and could fill in. And I'd love to talk to hear her thoughts about this too. But maybe when we're back at the studio, we'll do that. But in the meantime, let's talk about the giant genius dancer, Bob Fosse.
Willkommen, bienvenue, welcome. Fremde, étranger, stranger. Glücklich zu sehen, just vis enchanté. Happy to see you, bleibe reste stay. Willkommen, bienvenue, welcome im cabaret, au cabaret, to cabaret.
You know Fosse, even if you don't know the name Bob Fosse. His style is so unique, and one of the angles that I want to talk about with him, because it's biographies are fine, but we need ideas. Facts and dates, I forget all the time. What's the idea? And what's the artist's angle? And what's the style? And some of these interviews where he's talking, he's explaining his technique and how he got started. That's always a really interesting question for us to consider, because we see these giants and these geniuses, and we see their best work, right? And we wonder, well, they were just born perfect, or and sometimes they were, if you look at Mozart, but other times they work really hard. Not that Mozart didn't work hard, but for this purpose, we always see the results. But how do they get there, and how do they get their own style? How do they get their own voice? That's what we're kind of gearing toward with these classes, at least, which I want to really try to get you guys to find your own style and find your own voice. And that's what we do by looking at some of these people that we've looked at, over 150 classes or so that we've done. What makes somebody special, unique, different, stand out, where after they're gone, they're remembered for years and sometimes even hundreds of years, like we looked at with Bach. How do you get there? So Bob Fosse's story is interesting because his style came from, for lack of a better word, a disability in a way that he wasn't perfect, and he said, "Thank God I wasn't born perfect." Of course, nobody's born perfect, but we all strive for perfection, even in our minds when we know that we can't do it, or that there's always somebody better. And that's the truth. But if we get bogged down with that thought, we're never going to move anywhere. It's easy to sit on the couch and just say, well, what's the point of doing anything when somebody's better at it? But how to be different at something, sure, that's how to have your own unique voice and style. That's something that's going to be different.
I suppose if you repeat something enough times, it's called a style, I started with hats because I began losing my hair very early. And I've always been slightly round-shouldered, and so I started to exaggerate that, and I don't have what the ballet dancers call a turnout. So I started turning my feet in, and I guess that's the style they talk about.
So it's interesting. I mean, first off, he wasn't a leading man. He knew that he wasn't a leading man because he was losing his hair. And back then in Hollywood, you couldn't be a leading man losing your hair. So what did he do? He started wearing a hat.
Who's got the pain when they do the mambo? Who's got the pain when they go up? Who's got the pain when they do the mambo? I don't know who. Do you?
Okay, so the hat becomes a very symbolic technique or symbolic, style. I mean, already it's like, okay, well, I don't want people to see that I'm balding, so I'll wear a hat. Okay, and I don't really walk traditionally well, like for a ballet dancer, so I'm gonna change my legs inward. Okay, he's making his own style out of his own inadequacies. So listen to that sentence. His own style came from his own inadequacies, in a sense, his own limitations. So he's using his limitations to create something new, to create something that is himself, that when you look at him, you know that it's Fosse. And so, born in 1927 in Chicago, and a lot of kids, but starts dancing at 13 and falls in love with Fred Astaire. Usually with these things, we always see somebody that has big influence, whether they're a family member or just somebody on the radio or television, where you connect with that artist. So he fell in love with Fred Astaire, and we've talked a lot about Fred Astaire, and looked at that great scene in the Cole Porter class with the gay divorcee. So this is his idol, and this is where he's gonna learn how to not become Fred Astaire, but become his own version of Fred Astaire in his head, perhaps.
Chicago, I used to go to all the vaudeville houses. I see a lot of wonderful black acts, the Nicholas brothers, all of those wonderful acts. Then I'd go home and I'd try to do what I saw. Until finally I started doing an act, and I really couldn't afford a choreographer to teach me anything, so I started doing my own things.
And this is another interesting fact, too. You don't need the best, most expensive education or training to be somebody unique or different. Sometimes if you don't have the money, you do it yourself, and sometimes that your inner voice tells you what's right. Your inner intuition tells you what's going to work or not. So again, this isn't something where you're on the couch saying, well, if I had more money I could do it. No, he didn't have any money, and he still did it, and that's how he started doing his own thing. So his style, of course, are, the jazz hands, which he kind of was responsible for inventing, although I'm sure people did jazz hands in the Middle Ages and all that stuff. But black bowler hats, of course, because he wanted to hide his baldness. White gloves, angular movements. He studied acting with Sandy Meisner, which John Pazis, our boss, studied with. And he taught him how to use the body as an acting device. So what do I mean by that? As a dancer, you think you're constantly moving, right? Well, he was like, you don't have to constantly move to dance. So he incorporated stillness, perhaps, as part of the choreography. So if he says, you just stand there, and you stand here, and you guys start doing these things, we're going to create this whole environment. And that's what he did on stage. He created this mood environment instead of just stock dancing where they were just everyone's doing the same choreography at the same time. That's fine too. He really opened his vision to say, well, we can create people standing here, this and this. And he really elevated that when he got into film directing. And I think obviously he's a brilliant dancer and choreographer, but as a film director, he really was able to use the camera in ways to photograph and film the body movements and film close-ups. You can't do a close-up if you're seeing a live Broadway show. You see a lot of dancers, but to film close-ups, to get personal and up close with the dancer's body, that's something that's really you can't do. So in film, when he starts doing this, particularly with Sweet Charity, this is one of my favorite scenes. So although you can do this on stage, of course, he's using the camera and the viewing and the techniques to zoom, to get closer. And his style is, he was very influenced by Fellini. This is a very European style way of filmmaking, using ashtrays, using cigarettes as the props, as part of he's using all of these little things that are just there on the table as props for his choreography. Hence, he's creating his whole stylistic world of, you're in a Bob Fosse film, you're in a Bob Fosse environment. These, just like Fellini would use his cartoonish faces sometimes of people and expressions, Fosse would use people's bodies in a way that would say a lot to the audience without the person saying anything, or without moving necessarily. The stance and the style was saying a lot by just being there. So some of these films are just fantastic and great. Again, these are just clips that I've picked out and talks where he's talking about that I think are really important for us as artists. I mean, I can't dance, but why am I interested in Fosse? I mean, as an artist, boy, I mean, and as a director, such a visionary. Died at 60, lived a really hard life. And if you want to kind of see his autobiography, All That Jazz is one of his most famous films that he wrote and directed, and it's kind of about his life and his fears and anxieties, and it's wonderful. It's just, it's one of my favorite personal films, All That Jazz, of all time. Okay, I've said it all with dancing, and try some of his moves out at home, and bring up Bob Fosse to in Lindsay's class next time. See what she thinks. I'm sure she's got a lot of great information and anecdotes and all these things. And he's somebody just amazingly innovative and a genius. So, okay, tomorrow's film scoring results for The Mission. Can't wait. Love you, miss you, and see you tomorrow.